Good evening, everyone out there. Welcome to another episode of Throwing It Back with Sean Farrell. God is great all the time. All the time, God is great. And let's get into it. So I mentioned the two critical plays about the 1998 NBA that swinged Game 6 of the 1998 NBA Finals in the Bulls' direction. But something happened after Ron Harper hit that shot that was a fraction of a second short that counted. Okay. And Isaiah Thomas mentioned it right after Ron Harper hit that shot. He said, Utah is letting Scottie Pippen rest. Okay. Pippen had injured his back on the very first play of the game. He dunked it. He dunked the ball, and his back was just bum for the rest of the game. And so he was playing Game 6 with a bad back, okay? And so Isaiah Thomas noticed that the Utah Jazz were letting Scottie Pippen rest on defense. And he was guarding Antoine Carr, okay, who was stronger. And Isaiah Thomas noticed it. He said, Utah's letting Scottie Pippen rest. He's trying to guard Antoine Carr, who has a big advantage. And he said, if I were the Utah Jazz, I would go into Antoine Carr because Utah's letting Scottie Pippen rest on defense. So, I think that was another thing that turned the game in the Jazz's favor. Isaiah Thomas actually pointed it out during the broadcast. I told y'all I'm an NBA on NBC junkie. I told y'all that. So, something else I want to touch on. It's just misconception that the Grizzlies just recently retired Zach Randolph's number 50. Okay. But I think we need to point out that the original 50 is Bryant Reeves. Okay. The original 50 is Bryant Reeves. Okay. And he actually had a pretty good career up until the point injuries forced him out. Okay. Injuries really forced him out of the game into early retirement. Bryant Reeves is the original 50. Okay. Not Zach Randolph. Bryant Reeves is the original 50. Had one hell of a career. Before injuries really robbed him, okay? Just ask Shaquille O'Neal, okay? I was watching an episode of NBA Open Court, and they were talking about lesser guys that they played against, and they thought it was going to be an easy game, but it never really turned out that way. Chauncey Billups said that Carlos Arroyo and Tyronn Lue were tough for him. Chris Webber said that Marty Conlon was his toughest guy he ever faced, believe it or not. For those of you who don't know who Marty Conlon is, you can Google him. Charles Barkley said Popeye Jones gave him the most trouble. Isaiah Thomas said Steve Coulter was the one that was the hardest for him to check, because if y'all remember, Steve Coulter had a move called the crooked leg. He had a move called the crooked leg. He's going to his Isaiah said he was going, Steve Coulter would go to his right, full speed. That he would stop, plant his left leg really hard. Then he throw the ball around his back, and then he go up and score. The crooked leg, okay. And so Kenny Smith said he had trouble with Dana Barros. And Shaq was one of the first ones they asked. They asked Shaq, if you can narrow it down to one, who would be that guy for you? He said, Big Country. And Ernie Johnson's like, why? And Shaq said, guards who don't play defense, they always tell bigs to show. So Shaq will always show. And Shaq said he had the ugliest Donald Duckworth one-handed hook and shot, and it will always go in. And Shaq said, so I'm going in at halftime, and I would look at the stats, and I would see Shaq 15, Big Country 26. And Chris Webber just fell out laughing. Chris Webber and everybody else were just fell out laughing. Yeah. Shaq 15, Big Country 26. Yeah, so Bryant Reeves was one hell of a player. Like I said, injuries really took him out way too soon. So, I was watching I was thinking about this the other day, and I saw something on Derrick Coleman and the New Jersey Nets. By the 1988 season, the New Jersey Nets were beginning to be a joke of a franchise, along with the Los Angeles Clippers. And people don't remember, in the early and on up to 1986, the Nets had a pretty solid team. People don't forget they had Otis Birdsong, Buck Williams, Michael Ray Richardson, Daryl Hawkins. They had Mike Jaminski. Yeah. They had Bernard King's brother, Albert King. Yeah, so the Nets had a pretty decent squad. They began to fall off around 1987. They began to fall off in 1987. And by 1990, they were one of the worst teams in the league. Bill Fitch was the coach. They only won 17 games in 1990. So they drafted Harry Coleman. And they improved to 26 and 56. This Nets team had players like Sam Bowie, Reggie Theus, Derrick Coleman. They had a young guy by the name of Mookie Haylock. Chris Morris was on that head of a team as well. And so Reggie Theus retired after the 91 season. And they drafted Kenny Anderson in 91. Then that's when things began to click. Derrick Coleman really didn't see eye to eye with Bill Fitch. He didn't see eye to eye with Bill Fitch, and it was believed that he refused to go back into a game against Miami. And I think Chris Morris, he refused to go back into a game when Bill Fitch asked him to. So there was some animosity towards Bill Fitch from the New Jersey Nets, not just from Derrick Coleman, Chris Morris. And the Nets ended up Bill Fitch ended up resigning after the 92 season, which they made the playoffs. Lost to Cleveland in the first round. So after the season, Chuck Daly comes on for the 1993 season. And did you know that Derrick Coleman and Kenny Anderson actually began to call themselves the East Coast version of Stockton and Malone? And they actually believed they would be better than John Stockton and Karl Malone. Didn't turn out that way. Anyway, Derrick Coleman continued to, along with Kenny Anderson, they were one of the league's best 100 punches. I still put Jordan and Pippen at the top of that. That's up for debate, though. So the Nets were 31-24 at one point during the 1993 season. And Kenny Anderson broke his wrist. Kenny Anderson broke his wrist, courtesy of John Starks, who actually put a flagrant foul on Kenny Anderson, who I just mentioned broke his wrist. So you can credit John Starks, and I think that's one of the reasons why I am so damn glad that the New York Knicks didn't win shit in the 1990s. Thank you, Michael Jordan. Thank you, Michael Jordan. But back to the ain't no point. I know Knicks fans, it's still tough. So, Anderson ended up being out for the rest of the season and missed the playoffs. Derrick Coleman had a pretty good series for the Nets. Lost in 5 games to the Cleveland Cavaliers. And people don't remember. Bernard King was actually on that team too. Bernard King was actually on that 93 squad. 93 Net squad. He will retire after the 93 season. So Anderson and Coleman were pretty much the best duo. The best duo. No, they weren't. They were actually a pretty good duo in 1994 as well. Made the playoffs again. Lost to the Knicks in 4 games. Chuck Daly left after the 94 season because he thought that the players weren't mature enough and management wasn't making smart decisions. Which I think had a certain element of truth to that. I forgot to mention that they also had the late Drazen Petrovic. Rest in peace. They had the late Drazen Petrovic, who came to the team in 91. Died in a car accident before the 94 season started. So, but Derrick Coleman, he was seen as somebody who wasn't always in shape. Never got along with coaches. Bill Fitch. He also had a continuing irregular heartbeat issue that might have kept him from being in the best shape of all time. But he had a reputation of being confrontational with coaches. I remember there were some stories how he got into fights at Syracuse while playing for Syracuse in college. And so Coleman and Anderson missed significant time in 1995. And the Nets hired a coach by the name of Butch Beard. The Nets didn't do shit in 1995. They went 30-52. And it was around 1995, and it was around the start of the 96 season where Derrick Coleman asked for a trade from the New Jersey Nets. He didn't play the first couple of games for 95, 96. He started the year on the New Jersey Nets, but he never played because of the irregular heartbeat issue, I believe. And he was traded to Basketball Siberia midway early in the season when he was traded to Philadelphia. They finished 18-64 in 95-96. So Derrick Coleman was in Basketball Siberia. Allen Iverson comes in 1996. They still didn't do well. They went 22-60. Coleman was seen as temperamental, injury prone, not being able to get along with coaches, and he actually had beef with Pat Croce. Hope I said that name right. The 76ers president and GM. He had beef with Pat Croce. But Larry Brown, the 76ers coach, loved him. Okay. He loved Derrick Coleman, but Pat didn't love him. Okay. Didn't like Derrick Coleman. Didn't like his work ethic. Didn't like his attitude. Didn't like the fact that he couldn't stay in shape. And so it was during, it might have been after the lockout, but anyway, he was traded to Charlotte. And had a few decent years in Charlotte, but still seen as out of shape, injury prone. When Pat Croce traded him, Pat said, as long as I'm here, Derrick Coleman will never return to Philadelphia. And, Pat resigned as GM around in 2001, if I'm not mistaken. And Larry Brown bought Derrick Coleman back. And he played a few more years for the Sixers. Played a few more years for the Sixers, ended his career in Detroit. And some see his career as underachieving. His career was defined by not getting along with coaches, having a bad temper, not being in shape, injury prone. And so I guess you could say Derrick Coleman and the 90's Nets were one of those what if teams. What if this happened? Well, we'll never know. We'll never know. It's a history. Even if they did stay together, this is just me personally. I couldn't see them overtaking the Knicks. I couldn't see them overtaking the young Orlando Magic. And I surely couldn't see them overtaking the Chicago Bulls. Okay. So if they stayed together, they weren't overtaking the Knicks, the Magic, or the Bulls. No. So anyway, that's it for the for Throwing It Back with Sean Farrell. Hope y'all enjoy this, because I will be bringing y'all more content, and it's probably going to spark some debate among y'all. Peace out, y'all.